recently reported their words were that your views were evolving, and according to them, you had said that a person can be both a Darwinist and a good Muslim. Is this really a change in your position? Is this article accurate? And if it is a change, what brought it about?
Well, I don't like doing direct accusations about people's beliefs. A person might call himself a Muslim, but he might not doing his prayers, or he might not be fasting. But that would be enough for me to deem that person as a true believer and as a Muslim, as long as he accepts the existence of God, and as long as he accepts that Prophet Muhammad is God's prophet, is his prophet. And the possibility that he might be believing in Darwinism might be because of his ignorance. So I cannot accuse that person of his ignorance, because I know for certain that even a child of 8 years of age cannot and would not believe in the teachings of Darwinism. And before calling someone as irreligious or even a heretic, but we need to think very carefully. We cannot do that as human beings, because that evaluation is God's own evaluation, and that decision needs to be taken by Him only. And apart from this framework, I did not mean that Darwinism and the religion of Islam can be seen together, that they cannot be reconciled. So my meaning was not that.
But this wasn't a change in position for you?
I think that people who wrote that piece of news in that newspaper were Darwinists, or they were under the influence of Darwinism, so they tended to interpret my words in that line. It is as if they wanted me to say that those who believe in Darwinism cannot be true Muslims. This cannot be accepted. A person might be a Muslim, but that person might believe in any other myth or way of thinking about creation. So this doesn't mean that he cannot be a true Muslim. So for me, the main thing is sincerity and how these things come together. So this was a kind of plot which they tried to play upon me, but I did not get the bait.
No, I saw a recent book by a sociologist who does a study of countries like Sweden and Denmark, and argues that, as many polls and studies have in the past, that these countries have some of the highest quality of life in the world in terms of people's happiness level, whatever that means. Also open-mindedness, education, and also peace, political peace, not participation in war. These are also some of the world's most atheistic countries. I wonder if you think it's possible for an atheistic society to be harmonious.
Well, that example might be extended to Buddhist societies as well, because when we look at Buddhist societies, we will see a similar harmony and peace in those societies as well. And in ancient Egypt, for example, if you look at the pharaohs' palaces, they were, for their own time, very modern and rich and comfortable places. So they were ahead of their own time, but they were on the wrong path. And this did not mean that they were really happy people. And when you look at those countries which you have just quoted in your example, these are the countries where we also have great psychological disorders among people. There is an inner chaos going on in those people's hearts and minds. There is a kind of chaos in them. They are not really peaceful. So the large amount of drug users also reside in those countries, and this shows that theirs is not real happiness. And we cannot call artificial happiness as real happiness. For example, if you look at concerts to which thousands of people attend, you will see that those people are jumping, dancing and crying out during those concerts. So the appearance, the outer appearance, gives you the idea and impression that they are happy people. But if you go and ask them, they will tell you that they are not in fact happy. So we cannot judge upon our appearance. We have to go deep inside. For example, during the time of Prophet Muhammad, people were really happy. And similarly, the time of Jesus Christ, he and his followers were emitting happiness to all around them. And people who lived during those ages and who followed the paths of these prophets were really happy people. So happiness needs to be looked for deep inside, not on outer appearance.
Two final questions about science in general. And first is that, of course, you know that scientists around the world are warning that pollution is, human pollution is causing climate change. And I wonder how you read these findings, whether you accept them, and I don't know whether you've written about them, but what significance you attribute to this.
Of course, environmental pollution is a very big problem indeed, and I think that laws and restrictive measures need to take care of that issue. States all around the world have to impose very restrictive laws to prevent the further pollution of nature, because nature is a source for our spiritual well-being. It is nature who nurtures our spiritual well-being, and if we lose nature herself, that spiritual nurturing would end as well, and that would mean our end. So this is a very serious crime indeed, and polluting the environment needs to be stopped as soon as possible. So I accept the warnings of the scientific men within this framework, but I haven't published any detailed book about the subject which specifically deals with pollution. On the other hand, I have several articles and interviews which I have talked about the subject.
Now, my final question. Among scientist friends of mine, there's a culture almost of being wrong. In the course of their laboratory studies, they are constantly making hypotheses, testing them, and finding that the hypotheses were wrong, sometimes working after years of work. And this is talked about as being part of the scientific process, and part of what being a scientist means is seeing yourself be wrong again and again in order to find what's right. I wonder if, in your experience, you've had an experience like you've had experiences like that. You've changed your mind about something major or minor, and how this, and if so, how it leaves. How you think about the certainty about any of your theories.
A scientific person, a man of science, very naturally might fall into certain errors. But when we look at Darwinism, we cannot define Darwinism as a separate field of science, because Darwinism is the main source and core of many bloody ideologies. It is a plot of Satan himself. And Satan imposes Darwinism as a very strong ideology and philosophy, but not as a science, because it cannot be explained as a science. So when we look at the application, the way Darwinism is imposed today, we will see no scientific way of dealing with these issues. In Turkey, for example, the foundation of Ergenekon is about